Hi friends, Ashley from Wildwoods&Homestead. I brought my camera along with me to film an afternoon on our homestead. In this video, I am sharing a meal idea, an apple dessert, salad dressing, and a few products I make and sell in our online store. I'm starting with a comfrey harvest. Comfrey is something I found years ago and used it in topical solutions for pain relief. I have since learned about the great benefits of comfrey in the garden, and this is the first year that I've grown it. It also makes great mulch as the roots can mine deep into the soil for nutrients, and these nutrients are then stored in the leaves. The leaves of comfrey are quite large, and I pick them and leave them on my garden beds to decompose and fertilize the soil. I'm harvesting it this year and drying it for winter as well, so I can make some topical pain salves. Comfrey is known as knit bone, and I wrote a few of the benefits down so that I could read those off. It helps to treat wounds, reduce inflammation, helps with broken bones, which is why it's called knit bone, and it can also help with skin cell renewal and in general pain relief. It is for all of these wonderful reasons that I'm working to formulate a pain salve for sore muscles and injuries that contains comfrey, as well as other herbs that have similar properties, and those are yarrow and plantain. So if that is something that interests you, stay tuned for that. Now I'm just moving on to an orange and black pepper soap that I make and sell in my online store. And I always have a link to our online store in the description box. This is a lovely body scrub soap. I use ground black pepper in it for exfoliation, and I also use lemon and orange essential oils to give it a bright, light scent. Lemon is one of my favorite scents, and I love its ability to brighten the skin and provide an encouraging, uplifting scent to a product. I'm working to get more of these soaps made and stocked in the shop. I like to cure my soaps 4 to 6 weeks. This just helps to create a nice hard bar that lasts longer. And when we weigh and price our soaps, we do so at the 8-week cure period, just to be sure that there is no moisture left in the bar and that you are just purchasing the good oils that are in the soap. So it's due to this cure time that it's just taking me a little bit of time to get everything made and then on the shelves to cure and then back into the store. Earlier in this day, I was working in our greenhouse and my little boys found several cucumbers that were ready to go. I have never been able to grow cucumbers, and this is the first year we are beginning to pull them regularly from our greenhouse. So to me, that has been really exciting. And because my little boys were out with me and they were finding them, we decided to make a cucumber salad for supper. This is a salad that I have been enjoying making this summer. Normally, I will make it the day before because I find that the flavors marry together and it just tastes better the second day. But I didn't know that we had the cucumbers out there and we didn't find them for this day until that morning. So we decided to go ahead and just make a salad for supper that night and leave it in the fridge for just a few hours to marinate. All we do is just slice our cucumbers and put them in a bowl. I also added some tomatoes. These are not my tomatoes. I did plant several varieties of tomatoes this year in our greenhouse, but they're still green. Tomatoes are one of those elusive things for me. I've never actually been able to grow them, so I'm not sure if they will turn red, if they'll ripen properly before we start getting cold weather. But I'm kind of just leaving them, hoping that maybe they will ripen. But for this recipe, I just used a couple of store-bought tomatoes. And then I made a dressing, and I didn't measure. I don't normally measure whenever I make my dressings. I just put a little bit of olive oil and apple cider vinegar in my blender. I think lemon juice would be really good in this as well. I also just added some salt and pepper, some honey, some garlic and onion. And then our neighbors had given us a bunch of produce, and in it was this really beautiful parsley. So I put some of that in there to blend it and make this kind of nice thick dressing, and it tasted really nice. I actually think it would be a really great marinade for chicken. I poured some over my rice that night for supper, and it was really tasty. I think it would be a good marinade maybe for or a sauce or something to put on top of salmon, like towards the end of baking it. That would be really tasty. And then we just took that dressing and poured it over our cucumbers and tossed them and covered them, and then just put them into the fridge to marinate until supper that night. Last week, our neighbors invited us over to pick apples from their apple trees. So we have several totes of apples sitting in our living room. And I am planning to make some apple butter as well as some apple syrup to can. We use the apple syrup to do a second ferment on our kombucha, and I do plan to share a video on that. For this day, we decided to just take a bunch of these apples and make a dessert. I, again, did not really follow a recipe. We just washed our apples and sliced them. We put them into a bowl and mixed them with some tapioca starch to create a thick sauce. Added a little bit of sugar and cinnamon and salt, and then mixed our apples, and that was our filling that we poured into a greased cast iron pan. We have been struggling a little bit with gluten as well as grains. So the past few months, we've been kind of experimenting with gluten-free recipes and grain-free recipes. I used to make sourdough bread, and I loved sourdough. I would make something sourdough every day, and I think the art of sourdough is very satisfying. However, when we realized that we were all struggling with grains, I knew it was just something that I had to remove from our diet. And that was a sad day for me. Since that time, I've been trying to experiment because I do have a sweet tooth, and occasionally I do like to make a pie or a crumble or a custard or something like that. So I'm kind of just working on some recipes that are maybe a little bit more grain-free and maybe just have like a starch in it. So for example, the filling on this, I said, has tapioca starch in it, and then I'm just pouring it into that pan. I had a friend mention to me a zucchini flour. So that's something that I plan to experiment with, is drying zucchinis and making zucchini flour, and then experimenting to see if I could possibly make a grain-free dessert with that. But for our topping on this day, we just used a gluten-free flour blend that we make, and I only used about a cup and a half or so, maybe a little bit more of that. So you could just do flour, a cup and a half of flour, some cinnamon, about a cup of sugar, and some salt, and we just whisked the dry ingredients together, and then we cut in about a half of a cup of butter. Before I put my crumble on, though, I did put some cubes of butter on top of my apples, and just because I really wanted that to cook down, and I wanted the apple juices to mix with the tapioca starch and create a nice thick juicy syrup. And then after I put my cubes of butter on top, then I sprinkled my crumble kind of dough on top of that, and then we baked that for an hour at 350. Our friends that shared their apples with us also gave us this huge zucchini, and I was not yet ready to experiment with my zucchini flour experiment, and I didn't want to forget about this guy and just have it go to waste. So this night for supper, I decided to chop it up and roast it. So I just chopped it into slices, and then I tossed it with some melted butter. And then I added some salt and pepper to this, and I roasted it. I think I roasted it at about 425, and as it was roasting and as I was just kind of doing other things in the kitchen, I would just take it out every once in a while and turn the zucchini and make sure that it was cooking evenly. And then towards the end of the cooking process, I took it out and I sprinkled some cheddar cheese on top and then roasted it for a few minutes longer, and it turned out really tasty. I think I should have roasted it a little bit longer than what I did, but we were kind of running into a late night. Geoff and some of the kids had to run to town that day, and we just had a lot going on that day, so I was just ready to eat. But if I ever do this again with zucchini, I'll probably do maybe a smaller zucchini so that there's more room for it to roast, or I might if I have a large zucchini like that, I would just put it on 2 baking sheets, because I think that the more roasted it is, the tastier it is, especially with that melted cheddar cheese on top that kind of roasts itself into the zucchini. I wanted to share in this video too these pot holders that I use on a daily basis. I had actually made them a few years ago, and I just made them out of a cotton rope. And at the time, I just had this extra cotton rope from another project and I didn't want it to go to waste. So I crocheted some pot holders because I like things that are not only fun to make and pretty, but that are also useful. And recently when I was using them, I thought, oh, I should make these and put them in the shop too and just see how those do. So if anyone might be interested in that, I am planning to get some of those made and put up into our shop too. They work so well for picking up hot pans, using them as a trivet, or picking up a hot cast iron. I find them to be thick enough that I can handle things without getting burnt. And I also just think that they look kind of maybe traditional, and it kind of looks homey in my opinion. So I do plan to have some of those up in the shop soon for anybody who might be interested in that.